You know the moment. It's the middle of the month. Your paycheck just landed. You check your bank app. For about 5 seconds, everything feels fine. Then the numbers start shrinking. Rent, utilities, food, insurance, a subscription you forgot about but somehow still pay for. And suddenly the paycheck that was supposed to mean security feels thin, not gone, just fragile. Like it could disappear if one thing goes wrong. And what's strange is this. You did everything right. You didn't gamble, you didn't chase shortcuts, you didn't quit randomly or take wild risks. You got the stable job, and yet life still feels unstable. Before we go any further, this is Donki. If you want calm, honest explanations about money, you're in the right place. There's a quiet frustration a lot of people carry, but rarely say out loud. It sounds like this. I have a job. I work hard. I'm responsible. So why does it still feel like I'm one bad month away from panic? Not disaster, just panic. The kind where nothing has happened yet, but you feel it coming anyway. Most people assume that feeling means they're bad with money, that they missed something, budgeted wrong, chose the wrong career, didn't hustle enough. I used to think that too. It felt logical. Because if the system is stable, then the instability must be personal. But over time, something didn't add up. I kept meeting people who looked stable on paper and fragile in real life. Teachers, engineers, managers, people with benefits, people with titles. People who hadn't missed a paycheck in years. All of them shared the same quiet anxiety. Not loud fear, not drama, just this constant background noise in their head. If this job goes, everything changes. And the strange part is that we call these jobs stable. Stable because they pay regularly. Stable because they come with routines. Stable because society says they're safe. But stability, the way it's usually defined, focuses on one thing only. Continuity. The paycheck keeps coming. And as long as that happens, we tell ourselves everything else is fine. But life doesn't operate on continuity alone. Life operates on shocks. Medical bills don't arrive on schedule. Family emergencies don't wait for raises. Rent doesn't care how loyal you've been to your employer. And when a life shock meets a job that only works under perfect conditions, that's when the cracks appear. Here's a small moment most people recognize. You're sick. Not hospital sick. Just sick enough that going to work feels wrong. But you still go. Because missing a day feels expensive. Because you don't want to be that person. Because you've internalized the idea that stability depends on showing up no matter what. So you show up, and you tell yourself it's normal. Over time, that becomes a pattern. Your job works, and as long as your body does. Your income works, as long as nothing interrupts it. Your stability works. As long as life stays quiet. That's not stability. That's conditional balance. And conditional balance is fragile, but nobody tells you that part. Instead, we're taught a simpler story. Stable job equals stable life. It sounds clean. It sounds responsible. It sounds mature. It's also incomplete. Because stability isn't just about income arriving. It's about how easily your life absorbs pressure. And most stable jobs are not built for pressure. They're built for predictability. Fixed hours, fixed roles, fixed expectations. Those things feel safe until something changes. And something always changes. Here's where the discomfort starts. A stable job doesn't just give you income. It quietly shapes your behavior. It teaches you to organize your life around availability, to delay personal needs, to treat time as something your employer temporarily owns. At first, that trade feels fair. You give time, you receive money. But over years, the exchange becomes uneven because the job stays rigid, while life becomes more complex. More responsibilities, more cost, more uncertainty. And suddenly, the thing that was supposed to protect you starts limiting your ability to adapt. This is where many people feel stuck, but can't explain why. They're not failing, they're functioning. But functioning takes effort now. More mental math, more careful planning, more emotional restraint. They stop asking, is this working for me? And start asking, how long can I keep this going? That's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. Because once stability becomes something you maintain instead of something you have, it stops being stable. It becomes labor, emotional labor, mental labor, sometimes physical labor. And the cost doesn't show up on a pay stub. It shows up as fatigue, the kind that doesn't go away after a weekend. Here's another moment that feels familiar. You think about leaving your job, not dramatically, just quietly. You imagine a different role, a different schedule, a different version of your life, and almost immediately your mind shuts it down. Not because the idea is bad, but because it feels dangerous. Not reckless danger, practical danger. Health insurance, gaps in income. Explaining yourself, starting over. The job might not feel great, but it feels safer than uncertainty. So you stay. And that's when the real contradiction appears. The stable job reduces your tolerance for change. It doesn't make you resilient. It makes you dependent. Dependent on consistency. Dependent on predictability. Dependent on things staying the same. But modern life doesn't reward sameness. It punishes it. Markets shift, costs rise, roles change, and the job that once felt like a shield starts feeling like a single point of failure. Most people don't notice this happening in real time. It's gradual. First, you stop learning outside your role because you're tired. Then, you stop imagining alternatives because they feel unrealistic. Then, you start defining yourself by the job because it explains your place in the world, and slowly stability becomes identity. I'm this role. I'm this salary. I'm this routine. Which feels grounding until the ground moves. That's the part nobody prepares you for. The moment when a stable job ends or changes and takes more than income with it. It takes structure, confidence, direction. People assume the danger of job loss is financial. Often it's psychological first. Because when stability is outsourced to one source, losing that source destabilizes everything at once. I don't say this to scare you. I say it because many people feel this pressure already and assume it's personal weakness. It's not. It's a design issue. A system that calls something stable because it repeats, not because it adapts. And adaptation is what stability actually requires. Here's where things start to feel uncomfortable, because if stable jobs aren't as stable as we were taught, then what is providing the sense of safety people feel early on? Why does it work for a while and then quietly stop working? Why do so many people reach a point where they say, I did everything right, but I still feel exposed? That question doesn't have a fast answer, and the answer isn't what most people expect, because the real source of instability isn't the paycheck. It's what the paycheck slowly replaces, and that's where I got stuck for a long time. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. When I finally noticed what was missing, it didn't arrive as a big realization. It came quietly, almost embarrassingly small. I noticed it the first time I felt nervous about taking a single afternoon off, even though nothing bad would happen if I did. No warning, no penalty, no consequences on paper. Just a feeling, a tightness. That's when it clicked that the paycheck wasn't the thing keeping my life stable. It was replacing something else, something older, something we used to have more of, margin. Not money margin, life margin. The ability to absorb change without everything shaking. Stable jobs don't remove uncertainty. They delay it. And while they delay it, they quietly trade away margin for predictability. You don't feel this trade at first. In the beginning, a stable job gives structure, schedule, identity, relief. Your bills get paid. Your calendar fills. Your future looks legible. But over time, that structure becomes dependency, not in a dramatic way. In a practical one. Your income depends on availability. Your healthcare depends on employment. Your routine depends on permission. So margin slowly disappears. You can't easily step back. You can't easily slow down. You can't easily pivot. Not because you're trapped, because everything is interconnected now. This is why many people with good jobs feel oddly anxious when nothing is wrong. Their lives work, but only if all the pieces stay aligned. That alignment requires effort, constant effort, and effort is not the same as stability. Here's the part most people miss. True stability doesn't come from continuity. It comes from flexibility, from the ability to adjust when something breaks. But stable jobs are optimized for consistency, not flexibility. They reward reliability. They reward sameness. They reward staying inside the role. So people adapt themselves to the job. Instead of building lives that can adapt to change, I used to think stability meant minimizing risk. Now it feels more accurate to say stability means distributing risk. When one thing supports everything, that thing becomes fragile, not because it's weak, because it's alone. A single paycheck supporting housing, healthcare, identity, time, and future plans is carrying far more weight than it appears to. That's why losing it feels catastrophic, even when savings exist. The shock isn't just financial, it's structural. This is also why raises often don't create relief. People expect more money to equal more stability. Sometimes it does. Often, it just raises the baseline. Bigger apartment, higher expenses, more obligations. The structure stays the same: one source, one role, one schedule. So the underlying fragility remains. Just with nicer furniture, this isn't a moral failure, it's a pattern. A system that taught people to optimize for certainty instead of resilience. And it worked. In a slower world, in a world where jobs lasted decades, where costs rose gradually, where institutions absorbed shocks. That world doesn't fully exist anymore. But the mental model survived, so people keep reaching for stability using tools that were designed for a different era. That mismatch is where the discomfort lives, not in laziness, not in entitlement, in outdated assumptions. Here's something uncomfortable but important. Many people confuse feeling busy with feeling secure. A full calendar feels protective. A packed week feels productive. A stable routine feels safe. Until it doesn't. When something unexpected happens, busyness collapses quickly. Security doesn't. Security absorbs. That's the difference. This is why people who appear less stable on paper sometimes handle disruption better. They're not calmer. They're just practiced. They've built lives where change is normal, not welcomed, just expected. Meanwhile, people with stable jobs often experience change as failure. A layoff feels personal. A role shift feels like rejection. A pause feels dangerous because their identity and safety were concentrated in one place. Again, this isn't about blame. I fell into this too. I thought consistency was the goal. I thought reliability was protection. It felt smart at the time. But slowly I realized that stability built on rigidity creates anxiety, not peace. Because peace comes from knowing you can adjust, not from hoping nothing changes. This is where the phrase unstable lives starts to make sense. Not because people are reckless, but because their lives lack slack. Slack is the hidden ingredient. Time slack, energy slack, psychological slack. Stable jobs tend to compress slack. They fill the week, they fill the identity, they fill the future with expectations until there's no room left to breathe. So when pressure arrives, it has nowhere to go. It turns inward. Stress, burnout, fear. And people assume that means they need more stability. So they cling harder, work more, plan tighter, commit deeper, which reduces slack even further. That's the quiet loop. That's the thing nobody names. Stability becomes something you chase instead of something you feel. The late realization, and the one that lands slowly, is that a stable job isn't meant to provide a stable life. It provides income continuity. Nothing more. We were taught to expect more from it than it was designed to give. And when it fails to deliver that emotional safety, people blame themselves. But the system never promised resilience. It promised repetition. And repetition feels safe until life interrupts it. That's why the instability feels so confusing. Because on the surface, nothing is wrong. But underneath, everything is dependent. This isn't a call to abandon anything. It's not a warning. It's an observation. A pattern many people notice only after years of quiet tension. Once you see it, the feeling makes sense. Why stability felt thinner over time. Why anxiety crept in without a clear cause. Why doing everything right still felt risky. It wasn't you, it was the definition. Stability was framed as sameness. But real stability is the ability to change without breaking. And that difference explains a lot. Not all of it, but enough to finally breathe a little easier. Because confusion lifts when patterns become visible. And once they're visible, they stop feeling personal. That's where Donki leaves it today. Not with answers, but with clarity. And sometimes that's the most stabilizing thing of all.